In today's lecture, we will study the respiratory system. So this is our first lecture on systemic histology. We have completed general histology and the first topic of systemic histology is respiratory system. So the respiratory system is formed by nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx with epiglottis, trachea, bronchi and lungs. The respiratory system is primarily meant for oxygenation of blood and it involves transport of gases into the lungs. Respiratory system has two parts. There is conducting portion and respiratory portion. Conducting portion transports the air but it does not participate in gaseous exchange and it consists of nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi and bronchiole up to terminal bronchiole, means the conducting portion extends from nasal cavity to terminal bronchiole and its function is to transport air but it does not participate in gaseous exchange. And the next portion is respiratory portion. Respiratory portion is involved in gaseous exchange. It consists of respiratory bronchiole, then the alveolar duct, alveolar sacs and alveoli. And there is conditioning of the air. Once we inhale the air from the nasal cavity, it enters the paranasal air sinuses. And during the passage of air in the respiratory tract, the air undergoes air conditioning that involves warming, moistening and filtration. Then the respiratory tract also shows goblet cells in it. Goblet cells secrete mucus and this mucus, it covers the inner aspect of the respiratory passage and it traps the foreign particles or any particulate material to keep the passage moist. Respiratory system begins with the nasal cavity. Nasal cavity is the conducting portion of the respiratory tract and histologically it has three parts: vestibule, olfactory mucosa, respiratory mucosa. Vestibule is lined by skin and it continues with the exterior of the nose. It has hair and sebaceous glands in it. That is vestibule. The second part of nasal cavity is olfactory mucosa and it is confined to a small area on superior nasal concha and on the adjoining part of the nasal septum. Olfactory mucosa is yellow in color in contrast to the pink color of the respiratory mucosa. It is lined by the pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium and as you can see in this diagram, it has olfactory cells, sustentacular cells and basal cells. So the basal cells are germinative, they undergo mitotic division and they cause regeneration of cells. The older cells are replaced by new cells. Sustentacular cells are supportive cells and the main lining epithelium is pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium and it forms the olfactory cells. So the olfactory cells are having bipolar neurons in them. Then the third portion of nasal cavity is respiratory mucosa. The rest of the nasal cavity is covered by again pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium and it has four types of cells. Ciliated cells are columnar with cilia and they are most abundant. Then the goblet cells, they are scattered in the epithelium and they produce mucus. The non-ciliated columnar cells have microvilli on their free surface and they secrete serous fluid that keeps the mucosa moist. And the basal cells near the basal lamella replace the lost cells, so they help in regeneration. Thus, in the histology of nasal cavity, there are three portions: vestibule, lined by skin, has hair and sebaceous glands; olfactory mucosa has olfactory epithelium involved in the special sense of smell, and the respiratory mucosa is the third portion where ciliated cells, goblet cells, non-ciliated columnar cell and basal cells are there. So in this diagram we can see the olfactory mucosa of the nasal cavity. Though routinely we don't keep slide of pharynx for undergraduate students in histology practical, but there are few important histological aspects about the pharynx which the student should know, and so we will briefly see this slide. So the pharynx has three parts, we know: nasopharynx, oropharynx and laryngopharynx. So the nasopharynx is lined by ciliated columnar or pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, whereas the oropharynx and laryngopharynx are lined by stratified squamous epithelium. Then the lamina propria of pharynx shows lymphocytes, and two lymphatic aggregations, that is tubal tonsil and palatine tonsils, are present in the pharynx. Then the submucosa has numerous mucus glands in them, and the muscle layer consists of skeletal muscle fibers. So there are three constrictor muscles in the pharynx: superior, middle and inferior constrictor, and there are three longitudinal muscles: palatopharynx, stylopharyngeus and salpingopharyngeus. So these form the muscle layer. So we have epithelial layer, then the lamina propria, submucosa and muscular layer. Coming to the applied aspect of pharynx, there is a term Ludwig's angina. It is a condition caused by cellulitis and edema of the floor of mouth, tongue and pharynx. In this condition, as there is swelling, there can occur airway obstruction, and simultaneously the food passage is also obstructed. So there is dysphagia and dyspnea. Dyspnea is difficulty in breathing due to obstruction of airway, and dysphagia is difficulty in swallowing due to obstruction of food passage, and it is mostly caused by bacterial infection. Then the second term is diphtheria. So diphtheria is an infection caused by Corynebacterium diphtheriae, and it is a communicable disease. It can spread from one person to other, and this also causes airway obstruction. It mainly involves larynx, pharynx and trachea. The part of larynx that comes in contact with respiratory tract and nasal cavity is lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, and the part of larynx which comes in contact with food and oral cavity is lined by stratified squamous epithelium. The mucous membrane of larynx is loosely attached to the cartilage except over vocal folds and over the posterior surface of epiglottis. At these two sites, the mucous membrane is firmly adherent. Then the mucous glands are numerous over epiglottis and lower part of epiglottic fold, and saccule glands are present in the saccule, and they help in lubrication of vocal folds by means of secretion. The lining cells of vocal folds show microvilli and microplica. You can see in the diagram the microvilli and microplica. They are the ridge-like foldings of the mucous membrane, and these modifications will help the vocal folds in maintaining moisture by retention of fluid. And the clinical significance of larynx is, first terminology is laryngitis. It is inflammation of laryngeal mucosa. It can be acute or chronic. And the second term we often hear is the teacher's nodule or singer's nodule. So if there is misuse of vocal cords, it may produce nodules in it at the junction of anterior 1/3 and posterior 2/3 of the vocal cords. The epiglottis has anterior surface facing towards the oral cavity, which is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Then the free superior border is also lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium, whereas the posterior surface faces towards the nasal cavity, and so it is lined by ciliated columnar pseudostratified epithelium. Epiglottis develops from fourth pharyngeal arch, and the mucosa covering the epiglottis also covers, or it arches over the central core of elastic cartilage. So if we go from outwards to the inner aspect, first we have the mucosa where the lining epithelium is there, and after that we have lamina propria, the loose connective tissue, and in the central part there is core of elastic cartilage. The mucosa, as discussed earlier, the lining epithelium of the mucosa in the anterior surface and the upper part of the free border is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium, and the reason is it is facing towards the oral cavity and it comes in contact with the food. And the posterior surface faces towards the nasal cavity, so it is lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Also, in between the ciliated columnar epithelium we have few goblet cells. They secrete mucus, and after the lining epithelium we have lamina propria, which has connective tissue, and the connective tissue or lamina propria has loose vascular structures. It has mucus glands. These mucus glands located in lamina propria are more in the posterior surface of epiglottis, and in addition to the mucus glands, some serous acini are also seen in the lamina propria. After the mucosa we have the elastic cartilage in the central core. So the central core of epiglottis is made up of yellow elastic cartilage, and it shows characteristic chondrocytes. So these are single, large. They are lying within the lacunae. They are surrounded by the matrix which contains elastic fibers in them, and the cartilage also shows perichondrium. So this perichondrium has outer fibrous layer and inner cellular layer. Okay, so we will revise again. Epiglottis, it is the unpaired cartilage of larynx. It has anterior surface, posterior surface and superior free border. Anterior surface faces towards the oral cavity, so it is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium, and the posterior surface faces towards the nasal cavity, so it is lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. After the epithelium we have lamina propria, which has more amount of mucus glands, and few serous acini are also seen, and the central core is formed by elastic cartilage which has chondrocytes lying within the lacunae, and in the matrix there are abundant elastic fibers, and this elastic cartilage is again covered by the perichondrium which has outer fibrous and inner cellular layer. The wall of trachea is formed by mucosa, submucosa, hyaline cartilage, muscular layer, and the adventitia. First we will see the mucosa. So mucosa has lining epithelium and lamina propria. Trachea is lined by ciliated columnar pseudostratified epithelium, and the epithelium shows various types of cells. We have ciliated columnar cells. They extend along the entire thickness of epithelium. They are most abundant. They are having short hair-like projections of cilia which propel the mucus, and they trap the particles towards the pharynx and they protect the lungs. Then the second variety of cell is mucus cells. They occupy again entire thickness of the epithelium, and on H&E staining the mucus is washed off and the cells appear clear. The cytoplasm is washed off, and they show basally placed oval nucleus. Then the third variety of cell is brush cells. These are again columnar cells with blunt microvilli, and they form synapse with sensory nerve endings, and they function as receptor cells. Then the small granule cells, they are neuroendocrinal cells. They stain with metal impregnation like silver, and their granules contain catecholamines. Then the basal cells are germinal cells. Their nuclei forms a row of adjacent to the basal lamina, and the thick basement membrane presents as glassy or homogeneous eosinophilic layer. The lamina propria of trachea has loose connective tissue. It shows diffuse lymphocytes, and some lymphatic follicles are also present. It forms BALT, that is bronchus associated lymphatic tissue, are present in lamina propria. Lamina propria also has numerous elastic fibers, especially at the junction of lamina propria and submucosa. So they form elastic membrane, and this membrane is visible with a special stain known as Orsin stain. The submucosa contains mucus acini with serous demilunes, and the duct of these glands are lined by cuboidal epithelium. Submucosa also contains lymphatic follicles, then blood vessels and lymphatics are present in submucosa. And the tracheal cartilage is there. It is C-shaped. It has 16 to 20 C-shaped hyaline cartilaginous rings. These are incomplete, and they are bridged by fibroelastic tissue and trachealis muscle. Trachealis is a smooth muscle, and with the advancing age, hyaline cartilage may get calcified. Hyaline cartilage shows its characteristic features, means it has chondrocytes lying in the lacunae. They have a homogeneous matrix. The chondrocytes form typical cell nest appearance. They are seen in groups. And the perichondrium covering the cartilage has outer fibrous and inner cellular layer. And after that we have the adventitia layer. It has fibroelastic connective tissue, and some blood vessels and nerves are there. So we will revise the histology of trachea. It has mucosa, in which the lining epithelium is pseudostratified ciliated columnar. Lamina propria has lymphatic follicles, and elastic membrane is present between lamina propria and submucosa. Submucosa mainly contains mucus acini with serous demilines. And then we have the hyaline cartilage. It is C-shaped, incomplete, and the trachealis muscle is there. And lastly, the adventitia layer. It is a fibroelastic connective tissue layer. The lung consists of pleural covering. Then there is connective tissue septa and lung parenchyma with airway passage. So in this diagram we can see the airway passage. The principal bronchus divides into lobar bronchus and then enters the lung to form intrapulmonary bronchi, and they include secondary or lobar bronchi and tertiary or segmental bronchi. The segmental bronchi then divides into many small bronchi that finally form bronchiole. Bronchiole is less than 1 millimeter and it doesn't have cartilage in the wall. And the lung parenchyma consists of bronchioles and alveoli. The intrapulmonary bronchi have mucosa, then there is muscular layer, submucosa, cartilage and adventitia. So the innermost towards the lumen is mucosa. The lining epithelium of intrapulmonary bronchi is pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, and it has goblet cells in them. And as we go from the larger bronchi to the smaller bronchi and bronchiole, the height of epithelium goes on decreasing. Then the lamina propria contains elastic fibers and seromucous glands. After mucosa, we have muscular layer. So smooth muscle forms a complete circumferential layer around the epithelium in intrapulmonary bronchus. The smooth muscle fibers are arranged spirally and they help to maintain proper diameter of the airway passage. After muscular layer, we have submucosa, which has loose connective tissue with seromucous glands. Then the cartilaginous layer is there. So we have intermittent or discontinuous cartilaginous plates. We know that in trachea there is a C-shaped single cartilage, but here we have discontinuous plates. Numerous plates are there, and in trachea it does not line the entire circumference, but in the bronchi the cartilaginous plates, they cover entire circumference, and the function of this cartilage in case of trachea as well as in bronchus is to prevent collapse of the respiratory passage. It keeps the airway open or patent. After cartilaginous layer, the outermost layer is adventitia. So the cartilaginous plates are externally surrounded by a layer of connective tissue which contains blood vessels, collagen fibers, and it also has lung parenchyma. Thus, the intrapulmonary bronchus is formed by mucosa, muscular layer, then submucosa, then comes the intermittent plates of hyaline cartilage, and the outermost is adventitia. Bronchioles are the airway tubes with diameter less than 1 millimeter, and again important to note that it does not have cartilage and submucosal glands in it. Then we have pulmonary lobules. It is the smallest part of bronchopulmonary segment supplied by a single bronchiole. So a single bronchiole supplies a small part of bronchopulmonary segment which is known as pulmonary lobule. The bronchiole further divides and it gives rise to terminal bronchiole. Up to terminal bronchiole is the conducting part. Then the second term is pulmonary acini. It is the small part of lung supplied by terminal bronchiole. The terminal bronchiole further divides into respiratory bronchiole and alveoli. We have the respiratory bronchiolar unit. It is the functional unit of the lung and it has a single respiratory bronchiole with alveoli supplied by it. So there is segmental bronchus. The segmental bronchus divides into larger bronchioles divide into terminal bronchioles divide and they form respiratory bronchiole, and the respiratory bronchiole supplies the alveoli. When we see the bronchioles under microscope, again we have the mucosa, and after that there are smooth muscles, a layer of smooth muscle, connective tissue layer is there. So structurally the bronchioles do not have cartilage in their walls, they do not have seromucous glands in them in the lamina propria, and the terminal bronchioles do not have goblet cell. Instead of goblet cell, Clara cells are there in the terminal bronchiole. I will repeat, in the bronchioles cartilage is absent. Seromucous glands are absent in lamina propria, and in the terminal bronchioles goblet cells are replaced by Clara cell. So goblet cells are not seen in terminal bronchiole. So the layers of bronchioles, as we know, first the innermost layer is mucosa. So if the bronchioles are larger, the mucosa will be ciliated columnar pseudostratified. Okay, larger bronchioles, pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium with goblet cells. Medium-sized bronchioles have simple ciliated columnar epithelium with few goblet cells, and the smaller or terminal bronchioles are lined by simple cuboidal epithelium, and instead of goblet cells they have Clara cells. So as we go from the larger bronchiole to the smaller bronchiole, or when the diameter goes on decreasing, the height of the epithelium also decreases. Now in case of terminal bronchiole, we have Clara cells. Clara cells are non-ciliated cells and they replace goblet cells. They have microvilli on their apical surface. They secrete surface active proteins. They have the secretory proteins, and they reduce the surface tension and they reduce collapsing tendency of the airway. So it keeps the airway patent. And the Clara cell protein is used as a marker for lung injury in the bronchoalveolar lavage fluid and serum. Also, the Clara cells provide protection against harmful chemicals. It protects the alveoli from emphysema. It also works as stem cell. So these are the functions of Clara cell seen in the terminal bronchiole. After the mucosa, we have smooth muscle. So the smooth muscle layer is very predominant in the walls of bronchiole. Also, we have to remember, as we go from bronchus to bronchiole, from larger diameter to smaller diameter airway tubes, the amount of smooth muscles goes on increasing. So there are more amount of smooth muscles, and it is under control of autonomic nervous system. It regulates the passage of air through bronchioles. So the parasympathetic is bronchoconstriction and sympathetic causes bronchodilation. After smooth muscles, we have the connective tissue layer. Bronchioles are also surrounded by a small amount of connective tissue that separates the bronchiole from adjacent structures, and the connective tissue is rich in elastic fibers. The respiratory bronchiolar unit is smallest functional unit of the lung. It has a single respiratory bronchiole and alveoli. Respiratory bronchiole is usually less than 0.5 mm in diameter and it participates in gaseous exchange. Hence, it is called respiratory bronchiole. And if we see the layers of respiratory bronchiole, first it is lined by simple cuboidal epithelium which gradually loses cilia as it moves towards the distal end of bronchiole. After the cuboidal epithelium, we have smooth muscle cells surrounding the epithelium. Then there is a layer of delicate connective tissue that separates the respiratory bronchiole from adjacent structure. Thus, the respiratory bronchiole is formed by simple cuboidal epithelium followed by a layer of smooth muscle cells, and it is covered in its exterior by a delicate layer of connective tissue. The respiratory bronchiole then gives rise to 2 to 3 alveolar ducts. Alveolar ducts give rise to a space known as alveolar sac, and it is surrounded by cluster of alveoli. The surrounding alveoli open in alveolar sac. Thus, first we have a respiratory bronchiole which gives rise to alveolar duct. It continues with the alveolar sac and we have the alveoli. These alveoli are again lined by simple squamous epithelium forming type 1 pneumocytes, type 2 pneumocytes and alveolar macrophages. The clinical significance of the respiratory bronchiole is that apical segment of lower lobe is most dependent in recumbent supine position, and it is most commonly affected in lung abscess due to aspiration of infected material. In this slide, we have tabulated the difference between bronchus and bronchiole. So the bronchus is lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium and it has goblet cells. The bronchiole, large sized bronchiole are lined by simple columnar cell with few goblet cell, and small sized bronchioles are lined by either simple columnar or simple cuboidal epithelium, and they do not have goblet cells. Instead of that, we have the Clara cells. Then the smooth muscles are present between mucosa and cartilaginous layer in bronchus. The smooth muscle and elastic fibers form a well-defined layer beneath the mucosa in bronchiole. In the bronchiole, the smooth muscles are more prominent. They are predominant feature in bronchioles. Cartilage, it forms discontinuous plates in bronchus. Cartilage is absent in bronchiole. Then the seromucous glands are present in between cartilage and muscle layer in bronchus. The seromucous glands are absent in the bronchiole. So this question is most frequently asked in practical vivas. So what changes occur as the diameter of bronchi goes on decreasing? Means as the bronchi divide into smaller and smaller bronchi and bronchiole, what changes occur? So first we'll start with the cartilage. Cartilage in the wall of bronchi becomes irregular in shape as the bronchioles divide and redivide, and finally when it reaches the bronchioles, the cartilage are absent. Okay, cartilage is absent in the walls of bronchiole. Then the second is smooth muscle. So as we go from bronchial wall to the bronchiole, amount of smooth muscles goes on increasing. The amount of muscle in the bronchial wall increases as the bronchi becomes smaller and smaller in diameter. And in the bronchioles, we have more amount of smooth muscle. The smooth muscle layer is predominant in bronchioles. Then third point is subepithelial lymphoid tissue. It goes on increasing in quantity as the bronchus divides and decreases in diameter or when it becomes smaller. Then the glands become fewer and fewer as the diameter decreases, and finally when we reach the bronchioles, these glands, seromucosal glands, are absent. The seromucous glands are present in the submucosa of bronchus, but they are absent in bronchiole. Then the lining epithelium. As the bronchi becomes smaller and smaller, the height of the epithelium goes on decreasing. So first, the larger means, for example, the intrapulmonary bronchus, they are lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Then the smaller bronchus are lined by simple ciliated columnar epithelium. Then the bronchioles, they are non-ciliated columnar, and finally when we reach the respiratory bronchiole, they are lined by simple cuboidal epithelium. And again if we go to the alveoli, they are lined by the simple squamous epithelium. So the height of the epithelium goes on decreasing. And apart from this, the typical ciliated columnar cells, then the goblet cells, non-ciliated serous cell, basal cell, Clara cells, these are all seen in the respiratory tract, and the cells similar to diffuse neuroendocrinal cells like there are the argentefin cells, they are also seen, and the goblet cells are replaced by Clara cells in the bronchioles, and their function is to reduce the surface tension. In the respiratory tract, we have different types of cells. In the trachea, bronchus and bronchiole, we have ciliated columnar cells, goblet cells, then the basal cells, granule cells, burst cells, and Clara cells are there. In the lung alveoli, we have type 1 pneumocytes, type 2 pneumocytes, and burst cells. In relation to the lumen of lung alveoli, we have macrophages. So the ciliated columnar cells are abundant and they provide protection by establishing the ciliary rejection current. Then we have serous cells, they secrete low serous fluid. The goblet cells secrete thick sticky mucus. It catches the inhaled foreign particles and traps them. Then the brush cells are absorptive in function. They have pinocytic vesicles in them, in between the microvilli, and they have afferent nerve endings on their basal surface as sensory receptors. Then the clara cells are non-ciliated luminal projections with lamellated bodies in the cytoplasm. They produce surfactants. They produce the lipoproteins of the surfactants and act as stem cells. They can replace the damaged cells. Also, their enzymes can detoxify the noxious substance. Then the sixth variety is endocrinal cells or argentophin cells, Kulchitsky cells. So they belong to diffuse neuroendocrinal system. They secrete serotonin and histamine in response to stimuli. Then we have the basal cells. They are like stem cell. They can differentiate to different epithelial cells. And also we have intermediate cells. They are tall columnar non-ciliated cells. Lung is composed from outside inwards of serous coat, then the subserous coat, areolar tissue, and pulmonary substance. Serous coat is derived from pulmonary pleura, which invests the entire lung except hilum and pulmonary ligament. Subserous coat consists of elastic fibroareolar tissue, which invests the lungs as septa to form lung lobules. Then the alveoli are thin-walled polyhedral sac-like terminal air spaces of respiratory system. They constitute the actual site of gaseous exchange. And lung has about 150 to 250 million alveoli. And the total surface area of alveoli is about 75 meters square. And the size of each alveolus is about 200 micrometer in diameter. Then we have alveolar septa. The adjacent alveoli are separated from each other by a thin layer of connective tissue which contains blood capillaries. This alveolar septum contains fibroblasts and macrophages. Alveoli are lined by simple squamous epithelium along with some other cells. And also we have interalveolar pores. They are known as pores of Kohn. So it is important for MCQs. These are the openings of alveolar septa that helps in communication of air between adjacent alveoli. The cells forming lining epithelium of alveoli are known as pneumocytes, and these pneumocytes are of two types. 90% of alveolar surface cells are simple squamous cells. They are known as type 1 alveolar epithelial cells, and they are connected by tight junction, and through these cells gaseous exchange occurs. Then the second variety of pneumocyte is type 2 pneumocyte or type 2 alveolar epithelial cell. They are round secretory cells. They have lamellated bodies. They bear microvilli on their free surface, and they secrete pulmonary surfactant which is rich in dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine. The function of surfactant is to reduce the surface tension and prevent collapse of alveolus during expiration. These type 2 pneumocytes multiply to replace damaged type 1 cells, and similar fluid is also produced by clara cells in bronchial passage. Then the third variety of cell is alveolar phagocytes. They engulf the bacteria, dust particles, debris through bronchioles, and they also engulf the erythrocytes which extravasate in congestive cardiac failure, and it produces brick red sputum, so they are also known as heart failure cells. So within the lung alveoli we have three types of cells. Type 1 alveolar epithelial cells are simple squamous where gaseous exchange occurs and they are connected by tight junction. Type 2 pneumocytes, they produce surfactants and they reduce the surface tension. Type 3 are the alveolar phagocytes. They engulf the bacteria and other dust particles. They are also known as heart failure cells in congestive cardiac failure. The connective tissue framework of lung is formed by collagen fibers. Then we have numerous elastic fibers and they continue with those of bronchioles. We also have fibroblasts, histiocytes, mast cells, lymphocytes and plasma cells. Then pericytes are also present in relation to the capillaries. Then the alveolar macrophages which swallow the dust particles are called dust cells. And again the applied importance is that in congestive cardiac failure, these macrophages phagocytose erythrocytes and they escape from capillaries, and these cells therefore acquire brick red color and then they are known as heart failure cells. The macrophages also remove excessive surfactant and they secrete some enzymes. Gaseous exchange between the alveolar air and blood occurs through blood-air barrier, and the thinnest blood-air barrier consists of the first is thin layer of surfactant, then we have simple squamous epithelium of lung alveoli, then the fused basal lamella from the inner aspect, the basal lamella of alveolar epithelium, on the other side the basal lamella of capillary endothelium. So they are fused. And the fifth layer is continuous non-fenestrated capillary endothelium. So on one side we have capillary, on other side the lung alveoli, and in between these two the blood-air barrier is formed. So I'll repeat the components. First is thin layer of surfactant, then the simple squamous epithelium of lung alveoli, then the fused basal lamella of alveolar epithelium and capillary endothelium, and then there is continuous fenestrated capillary, non-fenestrated capillary endothelium. Now the adjacent alveoli intercommunicate with each other through interalveolar septa. In these septa, alveolar pores are present. Interalveolar septa consist of two thin squamous epithelial layers, and this helps in intercommunication between the alveoli. Coming to the blood supply of lungs. So we know that the respiratory tract has conducting part, and the conducting part which extends from nasal cavity up to the terminal bronchiole is supplied by bronchial arteries, and the respiratory tract which begins from respiratory bronchiole up to the alveoli receives blood from pulmonary arteries. The right lung has one bronchial artery whereas left lung has two bronchial arteries. Bronchial arteries then divide into two sets of branches. There are tubular arteries and septal arteries. Tubular branches of the bronchial artery supply terminal bronchial tube, and then it communicates with the branches of pulmonary arteries and they empty in pulmonary veins through pulmonary capillary plexus. Whereas septal branches pass through interlobar septa, they supply pulmonary pleura through capillary plexus and then they drain into bronchial veins. So, blood conveyed by one bronchial artery is drained partly into the pulmonary vein and partly into the bronchial vein. And the bronchial veins again, they have superficial and deep sides. The superficial veins receive blood from pulmonary pleura, then extrapulmonary bronchi, hilar lymph nodes, and they all drain, means the superficial veins, they drain into azygous vein, and the deep set of bronchial veins receive blood from intrapulmonary bronchi, bronchioles, and they terminate in pulmonary veins. So, superficial bronchial veins ultimately drain into right heart, and the deep bronchial veins drain into the left heart. Lungs receive autonomic innervations. So it has sympathetic and parasympathetic component. Sympathetic innervations are from upper 4 or 5 thoracic ganglia sympathetic trunk, and parasympathetic fibers arise from vagus. We know that parasympathetic fibers are bronchoconstrictor and they are secretomotor to the bronchial glands, whereas sympathetic fibers are bronchodilators and vasomotor. Again, around the lung alveoli, we have sensory innervations arising from parasympathetic fibers, which act as stretch receptors. They are known as J receptors. They are concerned with reflex control of respiration. It is known as Herring-Brood reflex. And irritation of nerve endings in bronchial mucosa or the bronchial mucous membrane initiates cough reflex. There are few barriers that protect the respiratory system. So the defensive mechanism of respiratory system includes mechanical barrier, then biochemical barrier and immunological barrier. In mechanical barrier, in the nasal cavity, we have hair vibrissae of the nose, and they are dust catcher. They will filtrate the air and they will catch the dust and other foreign particles. Then the goblet cells in the respiratory tract have ciliary rejection current. Then after entering into the paranasal air sinuses, humidity prevents the desiccation, and then the respiratory tube is kept patent by the cartilaginous part. We have the cartilage, hyaline cartilage in the respiratory tract, which prevents collapse of the respiratory passage. Then the alveolar phagocytic cells also have defensive mechanism. When we sneeze, it is a kind of somatic reflex, and coughing is visceral reflex. Then the biochemical barriers like lysosomes, they are phagocytic again, they are bactericidal. Interferons are having antiviral effect. Then we also have immunological barrier. We know that the respiratory tract has lymphoid tissue in the lamina propria and submucosa, and it prevents entry of microorganism. Also, the respiratory tract is rich in immunoglobulin A. So these are few barriers which act as defense mechanism for the respiratory tract. We will briefly see some of the clinical aspects related to lung. So first condition is acute respiratory distress syndrome. So we know that the lungs, fetal lungs, become mature when surfactant fluid appears in it, and when the lecithin sphingomyelin ratio of amniotic fluid reaches about 2 or more, at that time we say that the lungs are mature or they are viable. And if there is deficiency of surfactant secretion, then there will be rapid respiratory failure due to inflammation of lung epithelium. And this condition is known as acute respiratory distress syndrome or hyaline membrane disease. Then the second condition is bronchitis. We know whenever the term itis comes, it is related to inflammation. So inflammation of bronchus is known as bronchitis. It can be acute or chronic. Then the third condition is immotile cilia syndrome. It is also known as Cartignan syndrome. So in our body, where we get ciliated epithelium, it is present in respiratory tract, fallopian tube and sperms. So when these cilia become immotile, then collectively it is known as immotile cilia syndrome. There is ciliary dyskinesia, and it is autosomal recessive disease. When it affects the respiratory tract, it results in frequent respiratory infection. When it affects the fallopian tube, it leads to infertility, and it also leads to immotile sperms. Then the next clinical condition is emphysema. Emphysema is abnormal permanent dilatation of airways, and it occurs distal to the respiratory bronchiole, that is in respiratory part of the respiratory tract. And mostly the cause is either chronic cigarette smoking or the person is exposed to air pollution for longer period. And here, though we have permanent dilatation of airway, but the surface area for gaseous exchange is minimal. Then the next condition is asthma. In asthma, there is spasmodic narrowing of the airway, and it is severe form, and if not treated, it may even prove fatal. And then interstitial fibrosis. There is increased production of collagen elastin by fibroblast, and diffuse changes occur throughout the lung parenchyma, and it results in progressive hypoxia and breathlessness. Then pneumonia is inflammation of lung alveoli. It may be caused by some microorganisms or allergens or toxins or drugs. In lobar pneumonia, mainly, the bacteria proliferates to all the alveoli, and the proliferation is through alveolar pore, and cellular exudates fill the alveolar cavities. So that is pneumonia. Then bronchial carcinoma is the malignancy of lung. It originates in the area of squamous metaplasia in heavy smokers, means the pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium is converted or transferred into stratified squamous epithelium. So that is metaplastic change. Then Oat cell carcinoma is derived from neuroendocrinal cells or Kulczynski cells of the bronchial mucosa.